A millionaire mocked a little girl. Seconds later, her music broke him. The music stopped mid-note, like a heartbeat suddenly cut short, and in that silence, every person in the room felt something shift. It had started as a joke, a cruel, careless joke, but by the time the last note faded into the air, no one was laughing anymore. Before we dive into this emotional story, take a moment. If you believe in kindness, second chances, and the power of hidden talent, make sure to like this video, leave a comment, share it with someone who needs inspiration, and subscribe to the channel. Your support helps bring more stories like this to life. The grand ballroom shimmered under golden chandeliers, filled with laughter, clinking glasses, and the soft hum of a live orchestra warming up in the background. Wealth and elegance filled every corner. Expensive suits, designer dresses, and polished smiles. It was the kind of place where people came not just to celebrate, but to be seen. At the center of it all stood Victor Hale, a self-made millionaire known as much for his sharp business mind as for his cold arrogance. He had built an empire from nothing, and he never let anyone forget it. To him, the world was simple. You were either strong or weak, successful or invisible. That night was meant to celebrate his latest business deal, a merger that had doubled his fortune overnight. Journalists hovered nearby, eager to capture his words, his confidence, his power. But something, or rather someone, unexpected interrupted the perfection of his evening. Near the entrance, unnoticed at first, stood a little girl. She couldn't have been more than 10. Her dress was faded, slightly too big for her small frame, and her shoes were worn at the edges. She didn't belong in that room. Not by any of the standards people there believed in. Yet she stood quietly, clutching something close to her chest. A small, old violin case. Security hadn't removed her immediately because she hadn't caused trouble. She simply stood there, eyes scanning the room, as if searching for something, or someone. Victor noticed her eventually. At first it was just irritation, an imperfection in an otherwise flawless night. But as his gaze lingered, curiosity mixed with something else, something sharper. He walked toward her, his polished shoes clicking against the marble floor, drawing attention as he approached. The conversations around them softened, people sensing something unusual about to unfold. The girl looked up at him, her eyes wide but steady. There was no fear there, only a quiet determination that didn't quite match her fragile appearance. Victor tilted his head slightly, studying her like he would a puzzle. And then, with a smirk that carried both amusement and condescension, he made the comment that would change everything. He gestured toward the stage where the musicians were preparing and told her, loud enough for those nearby to hear, that if she wanted to play so badly, she should go ahead, and if she impressed him, maybe he'd adopt her. A ripple of laughter spread through the crowd. To them it was a harmless joke, a wealthy man teasing a poor child, something to chuckle about before returning to their drinks. But the girl didn't laugh. She tightened her grip on the violin case and looked at the stage. For a moment it seemed like she might refuse, that she might turn and leave, disappearing back into whatever world she had come from. Instead she nodded. It was a small gesture, almost invisible, but it carried a weight no one in that room understood. She walked toward the stage, each step slow but unwavering. The laughter faded into murmurs. The orchestra members exchanged uncertain glances as she approached. One of them hesitated, then stepped aside. The girl climbed onto the stage, her small figure dwarfed by the grand setting. She opened her violin case with careful hands, revealing an instrument that had clearly seen better days. The wood was scratched, the varnish worn, but it was clean, cared for, loved. She placed it gently under her chin, closed her eyes for just a second, and took a breath. The room quieted, not out of respect at first, but curiosity. Victor crossed his arms, leaning back slightly, already expecting to be amused. The first note changed everything. It wasn't just sound, it was emotion, raw and unfiltered. It filled the room in a way no one expected, cutting through the polished air like a truth too powerful to ignore. Conversation stopped completely, the musicians froze, and Victor's smirk slowly faded. The girl played not like a child learning an instrument, but like someone who had lived a lifetime of stories. Each note carried something deeper, pain, hope, longing, and something else, something resilient. The melody shifted, rising and falling like waves against a storm. It told a story without words, pulling everyone into it whether they wanted to be or not. People began to feel it. A woman near the front wiped away tears she didn't realize had fallen. A man who had been laughing moments earlier now stood still, his expression softened, and Victor, for the first time in years, he felt something unfamiliar. Discomfort. Not because the music was bad, but because it was too good, too real. It reached into places he had buried long ago. Memories surfaced, ones he had spent years trying to forget. Nights when he had nothing. Days when he had been the one standing outside looking in. The girl's playing grew stronger, more intense, as if she was pouring her entire life into those strings. Every note demanded to be heard. Every note refused to be ignored. And when the final note came, it didn't just end, it lingered, hanging in the air like a question no one could answer. Silence followed. Not the awkward silence from before, but a heavy emotional stillness that gripped the entire room. Then, slowly, someone began to clap. Another followed, and another, until the entire ballroom erupted into applause. Loud, genuine, unstoppable. But the girl didn't smile. She simply lowered her violin and looked at Victor. Not with anger, not with pride, but with quiet expectation. Victor stood frozen. For once in his life, he didn't have a clever remark. No sarcastic comment, no dismissive wave, because deep down he knew something had shifted, and he couldn't pretend otherwise. He walked toward the stage again, but this time there was no arrogance in his steps, only hesitation. He reached the edge of the stage and looked up at her. For a moment neither of them spoke. The entire room watched, waiting. Victor finally cleared his throat, his voice quieter than anyone had ever heard it. He admitted that he had been wrong. The words felt unfamiliar, almost foreign, but they were real. He told her that what she had just done wasn't just impressive, it was extraordinary. And then he asked her something he hadn't planned to ask. Where had she learned to play like that? The girl hesitated before answering. She explained that her mother had taught her, that they used to play together in small parks and on street corners, that her mother believed music could change hearts. Her voice trembled slightly as she added that her mother was gone now, that she played not for money, but because it was the only way she still felt close to her. The room fell silent again. Victor's chest tightened. For the first time he saw her, not as an interruption, not as a joke, but as a person, a child carrying something far heavier than she should have to, and suddenly his earlier words echoed in his mind. Play and I'll adopt you. What had been a joke now felt like a promise he didn't deserve to make. He looked around the room, at the people who had laughed, at the wealth, the luxury, and then back at her. Something inside him shifted. Not completely, not magically, but enough. He told her that he didn't know if he deserved to be part of her life, but if she would allow it, he wanted to help, not as a reward, not as a condition, but because she deserved a chance, a real one. The girl studied him for a long moment, and then slowly she nodded, not because of his wealth, but because for the first time his eyes didn't look cold anymore. They looked human. Before we reach the end, take a moment and comment something meaningful. Maybe a word like kindness or hope, to show that you believe small moments can change lives. In the weeks that followed, things didn't become perfect overnight. Victor struggled with change, with learning how to care, how to listen, how to be something other than the man he had always been. But the girl, her name was Alina, remained patient, and the music never stopped. She played in the house, in quiet rooms that had once felt empty despite their size. And slowly, those rooms began to feel different, warmer, alive. Victor started attending her practices. At first, just sitting in the background, then asking questions, then listening, truly listening. And one evening, as she played a soft melody, he realized something that shook him more than any business deal ever had. Success had never made him feel like this. Money had never filled the silence the way her music did. For the first time in his life, he wasn't chasing something. He was simply present, and it was enough. If this story touched your heart even a little, don't forget to like, share, comment, and subscribe. Stories like this remind us that no matter how far someone has gone, it's never too late to change, and sometimes the smallest voices carry the most powerful truths. Because in the end, it wasn't the millionaire who changed the girl's life. It was the little girl who changed his